Hello there survivors and welcome back to another build tutorial in ARK Survival Ascended. Today I'm going to show you how to build this all-in-one forest hut, which you could use as your starter base or at least early game base. It offers all the things that are important in the early game. It has a space where you can safely park your tames inside as well, so all of your, hard-fought early tames like raptors, carnos, gathering tames are safe on the inside, but you also have room for your crafting and storage needs. We have a nice small little greenhouse at the side so you can still start growing your plants. And of course, you got a second layer with your bedroom and everything, and even a layer at the top for your flying friends so that everyone has a space of its own. And it all in a very cozy and cool looking forest hut that is designed to bring you through that early phase of ARK in a very cozy aesthetic. And if you're wondering where I built, well, the original, I built that right over here on the map on Ragnarok. And during the tutorial, I was building right over here, which is a little bit further into the redwoods, also on Ragnarok. As always, if you enjoy seeing these build tutorials and you would like to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a suggestion for future builds you'd like to see down in the comments below. And as always, we want to start out with our foundations. We want to place two of them right next to each other, just like this. Then we'll take out some triangles, place three of them next to it like that. We'll do the same thing on the other side because we're making the outline for the first circle first, so that we know whether the spot you've picked for the build is actually suited to build the entirety of the foundation. So that's why we'll start with the outline, continue to make the circle with the same pattern all the way around, and it should then meet back up with itself on the other side. Now we want to decide where we want the main entrance, so either one of these sides that has the two foundations could be the entrance. It has to be normal foundations, not the triangle ones. And then once we've decided the entrance, we can go right next to it. We can have two more foundations there, two more over here, and we'll do the exact same thing here on the other side, expanding these little sections by two extra foundations on each side. And the opposite side is going to be where we're going to have another small circle. And to add that, we want to have a quarter foundation there first so that we can have a full foundation there. Then we can remove that quarter. This is just so that we have a new foundation which is centered with those other two that we had before. Then next to that, we can have some triangles just like this. We can create a little circle here in the middle, and then we can start adding our full foundations around it and fill in the remaining quarter or triangles just around the side like that. And that is going to be a little side circle. That is pretty much the footprint that we'll need. Of course, we're going to have to make the entrance. So what I like to do is either have some ramps or some staircases here in the front. If it allows you to, you can have some slope walls on the sides. Sometimes, depending on the landscape, it might or might not let you actually place those down. And then over here on this side, we want to go to this full foundation over here, take out these staircases and add one right there as well to have an entrance over there. That's pretty much everything that we need to still add on the outside. Now, of course, we need to also start filling in the inside here, and we basically want to just start filling in this pattern with alternating normal foundations and triangle foundations so that we can fill in the entirety of the bigger circle that we started with. So yeah, we want to just go around, fill in these separate sections all the way until we reach the middle, so that we have the two full foundations completely ready. Now we of course want to start working on the first layer of the walls. And we're going to start by creating a little bit of a skeleton for the walls. We're going to start here on the full foundations, adding in some pillars just like this, making sure they connect back to the ground because that always looks a lot nicer. And we're doing that on the full foundations because that's, an easier trick to get them in the right shape. Then we're also going to do this for the main section. We want to place one here, so on the cross sections where these full foundations go to the outside, and then we also want to have them there on the outside. So we'll do the same right over here. Place all of these down, again connecting them into the ground, of course. Same thing over here. Want to make sure we place those in, and then we can just kind of continue all the way around the build, making sure that we add these pillars in everywhere. Again, kind of creating the skeleton for the main build that we'll be working on. There we go. So with those pillars, it already starts to give shape a little bit to the actual main building. Now over here, we actually want to take out some quarter walls. We're going to have 2 over here and 2 over there, and we'll leave the middle open for now. Then we can actually have walls going around the outside of the entire build for the big circle. So we'll just go around, filling in the remaining walls, of course, keeping the entrance open, but the rest of it, we can completely go around, add in our walls to create that first layer and basically create that circular shape. So we'll have this door open and we'll have the main entrance open for now. This is also where you could, if you want to, pick out the steampunk skin and change these walls to that skin just to get a little bit of a nicer look. Of course, you've got the beautiful wallpaper on the inside, and you got a quite cool look on the outside, just making this stand apart a little bit more than your normal walls. So yeah, if you have the Bob Talltales DLC, this is included, and it's quite a nice skin to have. As you can see, there's a little bit more detail in these walls already. And before I forget, of course, we also want to add the actual gate here to the gateway as the entrance. And I kind of like changing that to the frontier skin to make it look even nicer. Then it's time to take a look here at the side. Now, this will only work if you're going to skin it, because otherwise it's going to look quite bad. If you're not going to skin it, you probably want to use the first layer of just stone and then a layer of wood instead of what I'm going to do, because we are going to use greenhouse glass. We'll have a doorway right there, and we'll have a doorway right over here as well as the entrances to our little greenhouse, so that you can actually have some plants growing here. Then we'll take out our normal walls. We'll have a first layer going all the way around, making sure we'll get that effectiveness up here. And then we also want to add a second layer of walls all the way around the building. There we go. So that already looks quite cozy. We are going to add some pillars, some wooden pillars this time, to extend the already existing pillars that we have. We can go all the way around. And if you want to, as a little bit of extra detail, we can also have the pillars here on the inside, just to make sure that it is all nice and symmetrical. So yeah, we want to go around like that all the way. Then we want to take out our roofs. You want to make sure that you know where the full foundations are. Wherever those are, we want to place our roofs down. So it should be every other one, basically, in a pattern like this. And that should leave a gap for a triangle roof to fit right in between, so we can go around with those, keeping up our greenhouse effect, and then all the way around at the top as well, create a nice little pointy roof for this building, creating a nice little cabin. Of course, it doesn't quite look like a cabin at the moment. We want to take out our steampunk skins and do the first layer here with those skins all the way around, so it will blend in with the existing bit of our building. And we can then also, of course, skin this one just to make sure. If you want to, of course, you can flip this around so it matches the rest of the walls perfectly. Then we will take out our frontier skin and we'll do the second layer of the build. We'll go all the way around just like that to change these walls into something much more cozy. And now you can't even tell that it is a greenhouse, it will look much nicer this way. The only downside, of course, is the roof, and it doesn't have any details yet. So what we want to do first is we want to go around with the steampunk skin again, change that everywhere to the steampunk 1 so that we can't see through it anymore, but it looks quite nice. And then you can even, I'm using the variant cycle tool here to make this quicker, but of course otherwise you just have to interact with the skins. You can even add in some little windows here to the roofs, because this has a very nice variant to let in a little bit of extra light if you want to. And also just adds in a little bit of extra detail this way, of course. And then what I like to do is take out my wooden roofs, change it to the quarter ramps, and add some in. We want to make sure that we don't overlap with the existing structure that we're going to build for the main circle. So we'll just add a little lip around the outside with some quarter ramps. Of course, we have to use wood or stone for this because there is no greenhouse variants of this. So we'll just have a little lip around the outside. Now you can pick whether you want to have these nice golden ones or that you maybe want to go just for a wooden one. You can of course paint that to look closer to the ones or the color of the main roof, which is what we'll do at the end. But for now, we'll just go around like this and change all those skins. And that means we have a nice cozy little greenhouse right next to our main build. Then for the next step, we're going to raise up the rest of these pillars. We're going to start with these main pillars here. We're going to raise them up by 3 in total using wooden pillars this time. So wooden pillars are going up by 3. And that's for all of these pillars on the inside here of the circle. So inside of the main circle, we're raising these all up by 3. Again, to kind of provide us with a clearer image of where to build. Again, this is to give us kind of like a skeleton outline of where to build for the next few steps. So I always find it quite nice to have these guidelines. So we'll go all the way around, adding them in 3 on top of the existing pillars so that we get the circle like this. And then here on the outside, we want to add 1 pillar on top of each of these corners. So 2 over here. And then, of course, 2 here on the opposite side as well. And yeah, oops. You don't want to do that. You just want to place them right on top of that, just like this. And this is so that we can start the next layer. Now, we want to take out the wooden walls. I prefer to flip them around like that. And we can place them here on the sides of these little additions that we've built. So we want to do the same thing here and then the same thing here and over there so that we have those side walls filled in. Then what we want to do is take out our quarter walls. We can fill in the sides like that, so basically create that shape. And then here we want to flip these around the normal way again and place them right on top of that. We want to then take out our thin pillars, have them here on the inside, and then we can have a beam going across between those, so just like that. Then we can take out the full roofs. We can add them right between those. We can have the quarter roofs at the front here, and then we can change to the quarter ramps and have a little ledge around the outside there, just to kind of smoothen that out and add a little bit more shape to it. And then we want a normal wall, flip the normal way right there in the middle. So what we'll do is pick our frontier skin, change this beam here at the bottom, change this one into the glass texture, so the second variant, as well as those 2 at the top. So you can see we get a nice rounded window here at the front, which looks quite nice. And then we want to have a beam continuing here from the roof and sticking out a little bit here at the end, just to get a little bit more of a cool shape. And optionally, we can have a shallow slope wall right there as a little bit of support, a little bit of an extra detail there to make this even nicer. And you can decide for yourself or not whether you want those skin to the front here. I would at least also skin the beam here on the top to the frontier, as well as the main pillars around the build itself. So we'll just go around and skin all of these now. Then we're almost done here on this side. We want to take out those slope walls again and make sure we add 2 of them right over here. Again, flipping them this way, and then 2 normal walls right above it. Then personally, I also prefer to skin this with the frontier skin, although that is of course whatever you prefer, but I think it just stands out quite nicely. Although I would personally also paint a lot of these structures, as you'll see at the end. Alright, so before we copy this design over to all the different sides, what we also want to start doing is setting up the next layer. So first of all, we want to have 2 full ceilings right there. Then against that, we can have a triangle ceiling. Then we should be able to go back to a full ceiling again. And then we can have 1 more triangle facing the inside. And this way, all these textures are going to be exactly the right way, which, I mean, personally, I quite like the look of that. And I would probably also change these to the frontier skins, although unfortunately that does mess up some of the textures, but at least it's still in the same pattern. So it's a lot better than having randomly placed walls. And we can actually already get this done for quite a few of these sides. So all of the sides between the pillars, we should be able to snap these 2 top walls. And with doing that, we can actually continue this pattern for some more sides. So we can have some ceilings there, ceilings here, ceilings over there, and ceilings right over here as well. And especially the one here above the entrance is important, so we'll focus on that for now. Go into the triangles, go into the full ceiling again, and then go into this triangle. And from this triangle is where we actually want to start a staircase. So we'll take out our staircase right here, and we'll make sure that it goes the right way, which means we can remove that triangle, because otherwise it's going to be hard to walk on. But we want to make this come all the way down to the base, and we can also add in a pillar right here in the middle. Of course, we probably want to change all of these skins to the frontier wood, or at least I would probably do that. The same for over here. But this at least will allow you to get up and down to this next layer a little bit easier, which is definitely going to make it easier to build all of this. So yeah, we want to go around for all of these sections where we have the ceilings already, just so that we can get these ceilings in the right orientations with the nice patterns all the way around already. And of course, after a few, we can also add in the triangles again. We only kind of need these open, which means we can now also skin all of these again, change them to the nice looking variant. There we go. And this will already help you a lot with having access to the next layer of the build when having to reach like some of the higher places. Then we can focus again on these sides. So we'll have some slope walls underneath all of these where we'll have those little additions. Of course, here on the outside, we can also place down our little quarter walls. And basically it's going to be the same, of course, for all of these little additions that we're building on the outside of our circle. So I always find it easier to kind of combine this and kind of make it one big task doing the same thing. Flip these around, add in the triangles, do the same thing of course here over on the other sides. There we go. Place those in, and then of course here on the inside we want to have thin pillars, just like that for all of those. Then we want to have our beam going across from one side to the other in those. We want to of course skin those to the frontier skin. And then we can take out our normal wall. Place that in the middle for these sections. There we go. Take out your frontier skin again with the glass. And we can make our nice windows so that we can enjoy the views around our builds. And then of course it's time to start adding in the roofs as well. So first of all, the actual main big roofs, we can start with those, adding those in for all of these sections. And there we go. We can have our quarter roofs along the outside so that we have a little bit of an overhang going on. The same over here. Same over there. And for all the sides. And then of course we can go into the quarter ramps to create that nice little bit of a curve. Which just looks a little bit nicer. Can do the same thing on all of them, of course. There we go. Sometimes getting the right snap point is a bit tricky, but we should be able to get them all in place just like that, creating a nice look. We can have, of course, our beams sticking out the top of the roofs as a bit of added detail. And then, of course, finally, we can have the slope wall underneath as that final little bit of detail if we want to. And then, of course, we take out the frontier skin again and we can skin the roofs to get that nicer look, in my opinion. And we'll do that for all of these sections. There we go. Same over here. And then one more over there. All the way around. There we go. Then we'll take out the slope walls again. And then on top of this wall, we still want to add in a little point like this for these sections before we can call them finished. So for all of these, we want to add a little point at the top. And then of course for this side over here, we want to make sure that we actually fill in the rest of the wall. So we'll have 4 walls up there and then some quarter walls along these sides so that we have that wall completely filled in all the way around. These top ones we can actually use the glass frontier skin on again to get some little windows to let in a little bit of light all the way around the building. And then we want to take out our wooden roof corners and we can actually add them just like this around those points that we've just created, because we need some extra snap points and this will help us get them. So for now, we're just going to create these little roof sections just above all these points and walls that we've just made. And then we'll switch from the roof corners to the triangles so that we can fill in the gaps in between with those triangles, which should get the rounded shape of the roof in place. There we go. So we'll just go all the way around, filling those in. There we go. So that's the circular shape that we'll need. And then hopefully now that we have that, we can take out our triangles and we should be able to snap to it so that these line up again. And we keep those lines the same way. That's why we really want to do it this way. Because especially if you want these patterns to make sense a bit, this is just the best way to do it. So now we can fill in the rest of the ceilings here so that they will all work in the right patterns on all sides, which is of course much better than having random patterns going on. There we go. We can do that all the way around. And then once we've done that, of course, we can actually skin them to the frontier skins if you also prefer that texture. I really do. I think this looks way nicer, but of course, personal preference whether you want to or not. It's inside your base, so you should make it exactly the way you like it most, but that does mean that we have that entirety completed. And it also will give us the extra snap points that we'll need. So first of all, what we're going to do is snap in some slope walls at the top, just like this, to get started with. And we want to do that for all of these walls. So the wall sections that we have not done before are going to get these slope walls now that we have built the snap points for it. So go all the way around, add them in, and now of course it's time to actually start working on these walls and giving them a nice design. And the first thing we will do is actually go around with our quarter walls. So it's 4 of them on each side, just like that. Then we can take out our thin pillar again. We can have 2 on top of each other, just like that. And of course, we can have a beam across the bottom. Then here at the top, we want to make sure that we flip this the right way around again, have those on the top, and then have normal wooden walls the right way around in the middle. These again, we want to change to the Frontier glass skin so that we get a nice big window. And then of course the beam here at the bottom, we can change to the normal Frontier skin. So we get some nice big windows at the sides of these walls. And that means we of course want to do the same thing for these remaining walls. So again, to make that a little bit easier, I usually prefer to first go around with one of the structures, in this case, little quarter walls, and make the window frames. There we go. So we'll just slowly go around, add in the frames themselves. Then we can take out the thin pillars, add those in. There we go. Over here as well. There we go. Of course, that's the one we did. We have some more windows over here. And oh, we actually forgot a wall. Let's quickly make sure we do this too. So yeah, we have the pillars all around us. Yeah, there we go. We'll take out our beams, and of course we can snap those into the window frames now, all the way around. Awesome, that's a good start. And of course those ones we can change to the Frontier skin. There we go. We can then have our walls in the middle, which are going to be our windows, of course. There we go, that looks good. Then before we fill in the skins, of course, we want to fill in the walls so that we can have our windows. We want to make sure that these ones are flipped the right way round. There we go. Just filling in them all the way around. And of course now we can take out those Frontier glass textures, add them in, give ourselves some nice big windows on all sides. And this just helps bringing in a lot of light, and yeah, just adds a lot of nice details in my opinion. There we go. And to not make this too flat, we want to have a layer of ramps around the outside here to just kind of smooth things out. In this case, we do want to use the full ramps just for a bigger scale. And we want to go all the way around the outside, adding these in. There we go. Just smooth things out a little bit, and as you can see, it's way less flat already just by adding these in. And then what we also want to do is take out our quarter roofs and actually give these little roof sections a little bit more detail by, yeah, adding a little overhang here on the outside. Just makes it all a bit nicer. So we're just going to quickly go round, add these in everywhere. They should really help transform. Basically, we're trying to make sure that everything is less flat and has a little bit more detail in it. So we can also add in our beams here at the top, just as we did for the roofs below, just to add in that little bit of extra detail. And if we want to, we can have our shallow slope walls underneath them, just as that extra bit of detail. There we go. All the way around. Then we want to take out our frontier skin, and we'll only skin these slope walls and the beams, not the roof yet. We'll do that later. So for now, we just want to do the beams and the support, because we already did the windows, of course. That's the first layer of our roof, but we're actually going up a little bit higher. So we want to take out our roofs here, connect them to the triangles, bringing them up by another layer all the way around. And then, of course, in between is where we'll need the triangles, so we can fill those in. Just like so. All the way around. Adding them in, getting this higher and higher up the roof. Now we're certainly getting there. Of course, we have our first layer down here with a decent amount of space. We now have a second layer also with a decent amount of space in there. But there's more to do and more to add. First of all, we can actually add in another layer of ceilings here. So what we want to do, find the top here of these roofs. This is the triangle roofs that we're snapping to. And that is, of course, where we would have our full ceiling. So we want to go all the way around the entire building. Add those in first. Take out our triangles. Add them in again. We're trying to watch the way they snap in here, so that the textures are in a satisfying pattern, basically. And then if we're right here at the end where we have the little greenhouse, we want to place this one down. So not that one to the right. That's where we'll start. And that's also where we'll start adding our staircase. So yeah, right over here, we want to add in the staircase. Two of them should line up. We should have one triangle before going further down. And of course, here we do want to have a little bit of the railings around it, just to make it a little bit safer. We can now add in the remaining triangles here, so that we have this. And then again, we can add in some railings to make this safer. We actually also want to add in the railings all the way around the outside, just so that we have those in place all the way around the build. Of course, we can then take out our frontier skins, and we can skin some of this, as well as this staircase itself. And what we can actually do is also continue this pillar a little bit further, so that that matches up still with everything. And then, of course, it also means we can now change the skins here of this ceiling and these railings over here, just like that. And of course, we want to also change the skins of the railings around this level. Get a little bit more of that darker wood in here. We also actually want to go around and change the skins of all of these ramps on the outside, just to match with what we've done for the little building on the side, of course, which means we can take out these steampunk skins and then start skinning the rest of this. So basically, we want to skin all of these sections, which should bring in a nice touch of color for the roof. I really like the color on this steampunk skin. It's quite good, and especially outside aberration where we have the sunlight, you can actually see that color shine quite a bit. And yeah, really like it. So we'll go all the way around, changing these skins just to transform the look a little bit, get that nice color and contrast in there, just going round all the way. And once we've done that, we want to change some of the variants here so that we can have a few little windows in the roof too, because the options there, we might as well. Adds in a little bit of detail, makes it less flat. So it's quite a nice little package. Of course, you could leave the build like this, but we want to build one more layer at the top. We want to take out our thin pillars. We want to add them right there at the corners of these ceilings. We'll do that all the way around the build. We'll change to the half pillar. Place one on top of here. And this is basically so that you can use this layer as an aviary for your pterodons or RGs, so you can fly in and out, park them safely up here. You can choose whether you want to use the normal wood or maybe go for the frontier skin like this and do this all the way around to get those looks in. Then, of course, we want to take out our roof above the full ceilings. We want to place those roofs down in such a pattern. Of course, trying to be aware of the snap points, because sometimes they work with you and sometimes they really don't. There we go. Just like that, going all the way around, and of course adding in or triangles to make the roof. So basically we're just continuing the same pattern as we had before, just a little bit higher so that we have a layer for flyers, which is always nice, of course, you know, a nice safe place to park your flyers. So we want to go around like that, and then of course we can change the roof skins here to be the steampunk ones, going round all the way. There we go. And then just around the outside, what we want to do is bring out our little quarter ramps and just go around it to add a little bit of an overhang here on the outside, which I personally always quite like. Makes it all a little bit less flat if we do this. So we just want to go around, add them in just like this. There we go. Try not to misplace all the things that I'm doing. Just following that little ledge until we've been round. And then once again, you kind of have the choice between the frontier skin or the steampunk skin. But for this final layer of the roof, I decided to go with the golden trim that the steampunk offers. I think it's a bit much if you do it everywhere, but here on this final top layer, I think we can get away with it looking a little bit more fancy. And then of course you can also change the variants again on this roof to add in a few little windows, maybe let in some beams of lights. It looks quite nice, and of course it also just adds a little bit of extra depth around the outside here. Now we're almost done, but there's definitely a few little things that we can still do. First of all, we can do a little bit of painting. So what I've done is I'm using the Architect Structures Remastered paint gun because that's a little bit easier, but it works the same if you make the paint yourself in vanilla. You want to go for the silver color here, and we want to just enable all the regions, and we want to paint the wooden layer of our greenhouse with our paint gun, just because looks a little bit nicer. You get the nicer contrast if you do this as well, because then we have the light walls and the darker wood from the frontier skin really standing out against each other, which I personally really like. We want to do the same thing here for the quarter walls, and with Architect Structures Remastered I can do everything the same for the same pieces, which just makes it a little bit easier for me. And then of course we want to paint the remaining bits, so slope walls like that, these full walls, basically all the normal wooden walls except for the windows, of course, because we already skinned those. Those are the ones that we want to paint to really set apart this look a little bit. So let's go around the whole build and paint all the wooden walls, slope walls, and of course those quarter walls that we have, just to get this look a little bit nicer. There we go. Once we've painted that, you can already see there's a lot more contrast now between the darker wood types and the, well, freshly painted wood types, which I quite like myself. And then here for matching basically the steampunk with the wood, I would go for the marine color on region 6 on these ramps. That's how you kind of make them blend in a little better. So that's what I would personally recommend. So at least the ones here around the greenhouse, if you've gone for the same effect, is what you want to do. And of course the ones here around the main roof. It's not a perfect match, but it's pretty close. And at least it's better than just keeping it as normal wood. So yeah, you just want to kind of go around the outside to get this all done. And then for these little roofs around the outside, they're like the little additions that we built, I like to do that in a different color. I usually go for green. The filth color is quite nice. So what we do first is the same region 6 on the ramps, just so that we have already done those all the way around the outside basically. And I just like to do this a different color so that, yeah, it stands out a little bit more. Then we want to change to the second region and finish the rest of this roof. So yeah, paint this all into this filth color to get the nice green roof. And I think that works quite well. Just a little bit more interesting to have different colors than having everything the exact same color. So yeah, we just want to go around, paint these few sections, and there we go. Then we have the side bits painted, we have the main walls painted and the roof painted, and it should be all a perfect match now, making for a very nice looking all-in-one starter base. Well, starter-ish base. You know, early game, decent amount of space, you can keep your tame safe on the inside, park some flyers, have a little greenhouse, and of course at some point you will run out of space, but it will last you for quite a while before that would happen, I think. And here we go. This is where I build my build, and you can see I added a few more details. I added some trophy displays above that door as well as above the gate, just to get a little bit more details in those walls. Also made a little bit of a vegetable patch garden here in the front, using some of the pumpkin decorations that you could unlock with the Halloween event last year. I'm sure it will be back pretty soon, hopefully. And otherwise you can always unlock this in Club ARK. I'm pretty sure, I think so, I'm not entirely sure. Hopefully you can, because it is quite nice as decor. But anyway, yeah, we get a very nice looking build. All the extra plants I used JVH landscaping for, but you could also use the plant pots and shovel from the Bob Tall Tales DLC, of course. And this is what you get. You have a pretty nice base for the early game. You have a spot for your flyers here at the top that you can fly in and out of. You can park them up here so that they're all, you know, nicely stored and ready to set off for an adventure. We have a greenhouse here to the side where you can grow some of your plants, of course, get all that going. We've also used some of the Easter event skins on some deco boxes to get that. We have a little bit of storage, preserving bin and stuff like that over here in the greenhouse. But the main thing is, of course, the building itself and the main part of the base, which is right in here. And the good thing is that you can bring your tames inside. So early game, this is really nice. You can park your raptors, your gathering tames, your carnos, whatever you're using inside the base to make sure it doesn't get killed, you know, when you log out. You can use these side bays for extra storage, of course. You can build little kitchens in them, probably not instantly with the industrial tier, but the normal tier. But just to give you an idea of what you could use these little things at the side, you could make your little smelting corner, of course, crafting. We have storage around all the sides. You can have your feeding trough here. We can have, of course, a fabricator and other crafting stations all around it. But yeah, you have a decent amount of space in here, even with being able to park some of your tames safely inside. And then of course we have the greenhouse right next door to grow some of our plants, which is quite useful. And then you can of course still go up the stairs to the next layer where we have our bedroom. I've got a power main to power my fireplaces. But yeah, I've got a little bit of a cozy place here. Generator in the middle to power everything. Got some beer barrels. We got a library. Everything nicely connected. And then, of course, we have the final layer all the way at the top for all flyers so that we can fly in and out of the base. And yeah, that kind of gives you pretty much all you need early on. And you can keep it safe, which, of course, that's the main feature. That is really, really nice, I think. And yeah, it looks quite good too, in my opinion. I always like a good round build. This was actually inspired by Hagrid's hut. That's the idea I had, to like want to build another Hagrid's hut, improve it on. And then I was like, I also want to kind of do that all-in-one starter base that I did a while ago in Australia. Kind of take that maybe to a little bit more of a pleasing aesthetic. And I think this is a kind of match that came out. So you have the greenhouse, which is quite useful, of course, to have. You've got your main build with all the layers inside, and you even have a good spot for your flyers. And yeah, looks quite nice. You can, of course, use the Frontier skin and the Steampunk skin like I have. You could technically also build it without. It would look still pretty good if you use like greenhouse glass as the windows, I suppose. Not great. Definitely looks a lot better with those skins. So if you have the Bob Talltales DLC, definitely would recommend using those. Anyway, that's going to be it for this building tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hope to see you again in the next video or stream. For now, goodbye.